Hello, and welcome to Reread Allegedly, where we allegedly read some books. We're here to allegedly read a collection of short stories that everyone is going to be very angry at me that I made them read. I'm pretty sure. But first, we have John with us today.
That's me.
And Celeste.
Hello.
They may quit the podcast after this. We'll find out. I don't know. Could be fun. Stay tuned. Anyway, do you guys have some alleged reads? Can you pull from a back pocket of more books to hand me that you've been reading, allegedly?
I went from reading 7 books this week to reading 3. So, yeah, I have more books.
Great. What are you allegedly reading this week?
I allegedly just finished reading Pistol Fist.
Nice.
It is a graphic novel written by J.S. Earls, and it is about a runaway slave who helps out with the Revolutionary War. It's a fascinating little story. He meets Benjamin Franklin.
How was it? Give us the brutal truth, because JS will hear this, so he needs to know.
Right, he listens to this podcast. I feel like it was a good, intro, but there's no more.
That's fair.
So,
get on it, JS.
It was a good setup to, introduce you to the character, but there wasn't a lot of,
It's time for the story to start.
Yeah. So, not a ton of character building as far as the main character.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, most people that have been experimented on don't have a ton of character building within that first bit because you're focusing more on what the experiment was.
Very true.
So yeah, it was a good start. I'm kind of sad there's not more.
Yeah. Well, come on, JS. Get us some more Pistol Fist. More. Thanks.
Just get on it, JS. We know you have nothing else that you do.
Nope.
Nothing.
At all.
John, what are you reading?
I just started reading Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So that's a thing. It came.
Book.
I have read reviews on it, and everybody seems to enjoy it, but it all ends with a question mark.
Yes,
I watched the movie, didn't read the book, and yes,
the book made me feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, I want to read the second one.
The science geek in me is loving it so far.
Oh, just wait. The science geek in you is going to want to scream later.
Yeah.
Because it starts out super, super logical. And then it goes, fiction!
Yeah, like, have some trees. And you're like, what?
What?
Hold on. Huh? Wait, what? That's a very pretty movie. Yeah, you'll get there.
I want to see the movie, but I needed to... The movie had just come out when I read the book, and so I needed to put some distance.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how much it overlaps with the book.
My thing is I tend to like the books better than I like the movies, so I'm...
Well, who doesn't?
So...
Us, apparently, last episode.
Well, that's different. That's different. We're talking about movies based on books. It's different.
And when I saw the John dies at the end movie before I read the book, and once I read the book, it made me hate the movie. So I am very much, I've kind of paused in the book because I've decided, if I'm going to have any chance at enjoying the movie, I need to watch that first.
Yep. And I don't think it'll spoil anything because it won't explain anything. So, based on what I experienced when I watched the movie.
Reading the book doesn't explain anything.
You're going to get a lot of pretty visuals. It was a very pretty movie.
So far in the book, I can say that the visuals aren't pretty. They're very...
descriptive.
Ill. They're very ill.
Well, ill. I mean, some of that's true in the movie too, but they do it so well that you're like, this is just a gorgeous, film shot.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
this is a beautiful way that they have put this together.
Like the visuals that I've been getting have been satisfying the 12-year-old boy in me, that likes bugs and gross.
Okay, that makes sense.
Bugs, gross, and weird. Like if you want to capture my attention, give me bugs, gross, and weird, and I'm down.
I had to struggle through the bugs, but that's a thing. Again, it held my attention well enough that even with that, I was hooked.
What about you, Squid? What have you been reading allegedly?
Oh, never mind. I won't talk about Alex Garner then.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you were going somewhere, if you were doing something,
I'm just wondering if he write the book or did he only write the movie and direct
He
it?
only wrote the movie.
The book, it was written by Vandermeer, Jeff Vandermeer.
Gotcha. Because Alex Garland, I think, did a good job. He did Ex Machina too, which was also a really good movie. So
Haven't seen it. No, actually, I don't even think I know anything about it.
Ex Machina is very interesting. Also, another weird science-esque movie.
Mm.
Anyway, my alleged read is Gallant, which is a very pretty copy that I have because I got a nice edition from my friend because she had an even nicer edition. She said, "Here, have this stupid one."
Isn't that a musical on Netflix?
Gallivant.
Oh, never mind.
Yes.
Did we ever do an episode on In the Shadow of the Gods?
No, I mean we talked about the book. It was an alleged read.
I haven't finished it.
Okay.
I started it and then I returned the audiobook and went, this is something I need to have a physical book for.
It's beefy.
Okay. Well, okay. That'll be a thing sometime because that's the reason. That's the reason why I look forward to these. We read what we're allegedly reading because Squid's the one who switched me onto that book.
One. I don't know where. I had to give it back. It was my friend's, and she moved to Iowa.
On the power of Squid's recommendation, I bought that book and read it, or rather listened to it. Who am I kidding? But yeah, I enjoyed it immensely, and I want to talk about it. So
yeah, that was definitely one that I went, I need to read this. So if we're doing that for this podcast, somebody let me know so I can start now.
Yeah, it's big. We'll just have to all read it at our own pace. And then in 2 years, when me and Celeste are done reading it, we'll do that book. It'll be the last episode we ever do because it was the first book I said I was reading, I think.
Some nice symmetry there. I mean, I don't know. I read the Bryan Sanderson book.
Mistborn?
No.
Or which one? I mean, he has like a bajillion, so.
Wheel of Time?
That's not
Sanderson.
That's Robert
Sanderson took over after Robert Jordan died.
I haven't made it to where Sanderson hit and took over. No, it's the Money is Light.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't done that one. I've done Mistborn.
Are you talking about the Stormlight Chronicles?
Yes.
There you go.
That's it.
This book is specifically Celeste. Go read it.
Okay.
What's it about?
I've heard good things about that author.
Yes. So I'm trying to see if the cover says something because the reason I was like, Celeste needs to read this is because it's like if you like Neil Gaiman and okay. So this book basically, like one of the reviews I read said Neil Gaiman, Holly Black, Melissa Albert, and Garth Nix. If you like those authors, you will like this book. And I know I've heard at least some of those names from you people who enjoy this kind of book. But it's very interesting. So it's about Gallant is this house, this location, and this girl who does not know who she is basically gets a letter telling her to return to Gallant. And it is kind of like there's a house and then there's the shadow house, and it's all kinds of very interesting things that happen. I can't say much without spoiling things. I went into this book blind, like I do most books, and I was super fascinated immediately because she used a sign language to communicate because she can't speak. And I went, is this book for me? What? And then I read it like that. It was
author V.E. Schwab is all over TikTok.
Yes. I also highly suggest actually picking up the book because it has a lot of special insert pages because it talks about a journal throughout the book. So you get journal pages and like shadow drawings, all kinds of fun stuff.
Nice.
I still keep flirting with the idea of buying House of Leaves, which is the reason why that's just what you were saying about the inserts in that
Yep.
book is what reminded me of that.
I don't know where I
I'm
put my
I'm
copy,
very
but
I'm very stream of conscious tonight, so
that's fine.
I might be.
I House of Leaves is one of those books that I always want people to read, but I never really want to recommend people read because I just never quite know if
That's
they're the
fair.
kind of person that will enjoy House of Leaves or if they're the kind of person that will be like, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" And I'll be like, "I don't know."
Squid, you could always just do it for this show.
I would
once.
never. I would
I
never.
would never.
Which is to say, I would never make Celeste have to read this book. So I don't know that you'd get through it. It's a lot.
I would definitely attempt.
I could not imagine trying to read this book if you have any sort of reading difficulties with dyslexia.
Gotcha.
Because they literally have things everywhere all the time.
Which, for those of the listening audience who doesn't know this, because I'm assuming that this is all going to be in, I do have dyslexia and dyscalculia and a couple other learning disabilities, so I struggle past that. Most days it's fine, and then I get tired and I go, "Ooh, the words are floating.
Where are they going?" And this
Why
book,
are they moving?
This book makes the words move, so I feel like it would just be worse.
Oh no! I actually struggled with, which you know this because we talked about it in chat, but I struggled with parts of Night Film because of that, because it switched the
This is like
normal black on white print or
if you
black
took
print on
Night
white paper
Film
to black
and then
on. Yeah.
You gave Night Film every drug you had.
Oh.
And then put it in a book. That's House of Leaves.
Okay.
So it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And it's also significantly longer because it's like 1,000 pages.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But some of those pages are like one word on the page.
This is true. So, at least 20 of those pages are tiny pages. Some of them have 3 pages in one. So it kind of evens out.
Okay, yeah, no, maybe not. Maybe not. It sounds fascinating, but it also
you should go read Gallant. John should go read House of Leaves, and we'll all be happy at the end. But let's go talk about the book we're here to talk about. So, today we're reading How We Are Hungry by Dave Edgars. The description for this book says, How We Are Hungry is a gripping, lyrical, always intensely soulful group of stories. Though they range from doomed Irish setters' tales of running and jumping, after I was thrown in the river and before I drowned, to bitterly comic meditation on suicide and friendship, climbing to the window, pretending to dance, the stories share a haunting and haunted sense of morality. Though full of bursts of levity and humor, the book is deeply informed by the troubled times in which it was written, which is a good time to say, content warning for this book. There are some very heavy themes throughout. So if hearing about perhaps tales that hint at suicidal ideation, what else is there? Lots of mental
sexual
health,
assault,
sexual assault and content in general, and death. There's a lot of death in this book. So just caution on listening to this.
Perhaps maybe not listen to this episode with the kiddies within range if you don't want to answer questions.
Or listen to it first and then decide if it's something you want to talk about.
And if we end up touching on any of those harsh subjects in our conversation, we will try not to go in depth and keep the conversation brief in those areas.
We will warn you ahead of time and put some timestamps in the description as well in case you want to skip past some things.
So I just said that because I know we have some parents who listen, and so I don't know if they listen with headphones or if they listen to the podcast out loud. Yes. So maybe headphones.
Yes. I suggest don't let your kid read this book, maybe for a while.
No. Or ever.
Well, when they're an adult, they can make their choice. But
No,
while they're still your child,
we did say kid. We did say kid.
hey, I'll always be my mom's kid.
You will always be your mom's child, but you are no longer a kid.
You're a grown goat, Squid.
I'm a goat?
Greatest of all time.
Because
You're a goat, Squid.
a kid is
That's
a
true.
goat.
I'm a grown-up goat now.
We've already decided that Dave is a goat.
Dave is a
Dave is
goat. I'm a squid. My
Dave's
mama
a
squid
goat.
doesn't care what I read, so it's okay. She can't control me. She listens to this podcast. I love you, Mom.
Hi, Mom Squid.
I was thinking about that when you said she can't control me. I was like, I wonder what her response to that's gonna be.
She knows who I am. It's fine.
It's fine.
All right. Who wants to start? I know
Squid's
there are
mom.
thoughts.
Okay, so I'm gonna probably not be the most talkative person on this episode because when we decided to do this episode like what 2 months ago now.
Yeah,
I've had this
a
book
month and a
picked up
half
for a while. Yeah.
it's been
Right.
on the list for a while.
I literally like Squid was like, okay, well, we're gonna do this book, and I'm like, cool. And the next day I went out and got it, like borrowed it from my library, and within 2 days I'm like, I'm done. Let's do this. And everyone's like, what?
Yeah. For reference, if the description wasn't clear, this is a collection of short stories. It's not a novel. And it's also not a very long collection. I think it's less than 200 pages. So
Yeah,
It's
it's
218 pages.
it's a quick read, but
think mine
there's
was.
some intense stuff in it. So
It was not a quick read for me.
Mine was only 168 pages.
I am jealous.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because I have really tiny font.
No, I have the book. I don't have it in here. I have the physical book. And the
maybe it's the
physical
ebook.
book is 218 pages.
Interesting.
So
Oh well.
I am so
I'm enjoying this silence because we're all trying to figure out how to approach this book.
I am about to figure that out. Dallas was talking to a listener, and they went, Celeste is Switzerland.
That's
Not
our
in this
Bobo.
episode.
Not in this episode.
Mm-mm.
Because boy, howdy, Squid, I love you, but I hated this book.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite all right.
Did not enjoy it. Like the one story that I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. They then like killed the dog. And I was like, no. The one thing I might have been enjoying because it was from the perspective of a puppy.
So the second to last story in the book.
It was the last one for me.
Oh, the last one. It is the last one, yes. After I was thrown in the water,
last
but
one
before
was the
I
one
drowned.
up the mountain, which was a little. I was like, okay. I mean, this is not my favorite, but this
It's
is
a long
cool.
one.
And
Yeah.
then the idiot ran back down the mountain because that helped.
Up the mountain, coming down slowly, not accurately named.
Now that we're starting to talk about the stories in the book, a lot of it's starting to flash back to me. I won't say that I actively, now that I'm remembering it better, because like the biggest thing that stuck with me was the sexual assault scene that happens in this book.
That whole story
And
was so creepy.
I had a lot of thoughts about that story.
The thing about it is that story affected me so negatively that's pretty much what I took with me from the book. But now that I'm remembering all the other stories in it, I'm the outlier according to Squid, because Squid said that this author is very divisive. You either really like his stuff or you really dislike his stuff. And now that I'm remembering the other stories in this book, I'm actually very ambivalent to this book. I'm going to be Celeste in this conversation and be like, I'm going to be the Switzerland. Sorry, that's our Bobo, but
was terrible.
I did a lot of notes for almost each story because I had a lot of
Mhm.
different thoughts for each of them. So you might also think of things if I mention any of them.
There were a couple stories that I did enjoy that kept my attention. The mountain climbing story held my attention
Yeah,
more
that
than
one.
I expected it to. Um, there was a very short story about a parent's
She
perspective. I think
waits, seething, blooming. It's about the mom.
and her perspective on her child. Yes.
One of my
For
favorites.
for some reason that one was just like, yes, I want to hear more about that. But then it
Where he's getting
stopped, and
home late
mhm.
and she's like, I'm ready. I'm ready to kill this son of mine.
I wanted to hear more of that story, but it stopped before anything could happen. And it's just like, no, I want to hear more of that. Um, but there were some stories in there. It's just like, is this necessary? Like, there's one story about some lady who goes to Costa Rica with a friend with
Yeah.
the
The
with
only
the
meaning of the oil wet water.
with the explicit intention of sleeping with him. And I'm like, okay, yuck.
Yeah.
Um, and and but there was a couple of moments within that story where he gets a little bit esoteric, where he's talking about like what the sky says to the
Yep.
ocean and things like that. I'm like,
The horses had
why?
no symbolic value. That one has
Why
a
were
lot of
the
really
horses talking?
that story is a fascinating
Why?
one. Not my favorite.
I'm
Why?
trying to understand the imagery he's using, but it's like it felt less like a story and more like modern poetry
Yeah.
where there and it's just like, I get what you're doing, but I don't enjoy it.
Yeah. I
I
think that's
didn't
one of the
get what he
things
was
too.
doing, and I didn't enjoy it.
that one was weird.
Like,
Yeah.
why in the story that with the creeper
Quiet.
were
Not me telling you to be quiet, but that was the title.
yeah, that's the title. Why were the sheep?
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost. Her rage was too strong.
I think the look that froze on her face says everything.
Let's just screenshot that one for the listening audience. Someday she'll return. I'm going to go back to the water story.
All right.
Since she had the note about quiet and she's not here. So, oh well. I had several things from that story that I wrote down that I really enjoyed from a writing perspective.
Now, remind me, because like I said, it's been a couple of months. It's been a couple of months since I've listened to this audiobook. Which one is the water story that you're referring to?
That's Pillar going to Costa Rica to
Oh,
sleep with this man.
ick. Ugh,
Yeah, like I didn't like the character at all or the story that it was representing, but some of the lines that he had in there about it, like I feel like Dave Edgars has this way of writing that is very visceral in some of his descriptions. So there's just one line that says Pillar wanted to cut stomachs open with glass, and that was like the whole sentence. There was a sentence, it was it by itself in a paragraph, and like his observations just make me think of the embodiment of intrusive thoughts, but we're actually getting to see them, which is like normally we don't get to see those in a story. We just get to see people being happy doing these things, but sometimes you're just sitting there and you're like, boy, I'd love to just shank someone today. And he captures that very well.
Mm.
And horses talking to each other.
Yeah. Like, and once again, I understand the esotericism that he's trying to put in there. Like,
Yeah.
it's an artistic choice, but I don't see how it enhanced anything that he was trying to write about.
Right. And very much of it is just like Dave Edgars has a style of writing that you can read it and be like, Dave Edgars wrote this. That's this man's writing. There it is. But this book is also like a collection of stories about, as the title says, how we are hungry and exploring like hunger in different ways. And I think that story specifically was the first one where I wrote down that even though these stories center around like what people are hungry for, it shows more so in these stories, I think, that most people don't know how to sate their hunger properly.
Mm,
And more than that, we just tend to complicate it and worsen it and make it more just because we want it so much.
mm.
So it's not necessarily hunger, it's just about cravings. And we give a lot of power to our cravings. And then we focus on them and then they get bigger. And then you're in Costa Rica sleeping with a man. That's what I got from that story.
Or talking to sheep.
Or talking to sheep. Or horses. Or trees and
having
clouds.
having thoughts of certain person's anatomy flying across the room at them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, it's just like some of the descriptions. Yeah, I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, but I get it. Like,
It's not even a cup of tea.
well, it wasn't tea at all, actually.
It's like sauerkraut.
I love sauerkraut. Maybe that's
I hate sauerkraut. So there you go.
there
This
we
is
go.
sauerkraut.
This book is sauerkraut.
It felt very pretentious to me.
And
Okay.
that's what people say.
Okay,
That
Celeste, you had some internet issues. You are back with us. You were about to rant about
Quiet.
about one of the stories.
I was. And I let it out because I didn't realize the internet went out.
She's done. She's got it off her chest.
I was just yelling at
But-
the mic, and Dallas pops his head in and he goes, "Our internet's out." I
You're
went,
just
"What?"
you're by yourself. It's fine. That's like like John, you said you're ambivalent, but that's the number one. Like, if you look at Dave Edgar's reviews, it's like this man's pretentious and he's trying to be so deep. Or you have people that are like, I got a lot out of that. That was really interesting.
See,
It's very little in between.
my perspective, and maybe this says something about. I've noticed when our authors get so esoteric with how they write, it's more about discovering who the reader is and less about what the author's writing. And I think what I found out about myself is I am less in the camp of I got a lot out of it or that seemed pretentious, as I want to understand, but there's not enough information here for me to do so.
I just was, because I agree there was not enough information to understand what he was getting at. That's actually one of the things I wrote in my notes, is that there was not enough information to make me care about what was happening. And because there was not enough information to make me care, I also didn't understand what was happening. And like, I'm not the smartest in the bunch, but I'm also not the stupidest. And I just didn't get it. Like, I didn't understand why I was caring about these things.
That's fair. Do you want to give your rant on quiet now? For a second
The
time?
rant was, why are the sheep talking and wanting to murder people?
Oh, well, sheep are like that. Have you ever watched Black Sheep?
Like, no.
Are you talking about the movie with David Spade and Chris Farley?
Is it set in New Zealand?
No, it's set
Then
in
no.
Seattle.
You guys should watch Black Sheep for the bottom shelf. It's a fascinating time.
Solid pass, but
Okay.
But
thanks.
legitimately, the story was already creepy
Mhm.
because it's from the mindset of a creeper.
Yes.
And like, they are the main person talking. But then the sheep are talking.
I forgot the sheep
So,
talked
like,
in that
sir,
story.
Sir, these are two totally different mental issues. Please go admit yourself to a hospital.
And I think, like, on the flip side of that, as the person that did enjoy this book, because I read it and I'm like, wow, that man's messed up. This author did such a good job of capturing a man that is really messed up. And like every line that reflected that, there was one at the beginning before he gets too weird where he says, she was good at everything. I couldn't remember anything she couldn't do well. I wasn't jealous about this. I was not threatened. I should be able to just make a statement like that without being judged. And that just like rang in my head of those people that are like, I don't cause drama. And you know that they cause drama.
Yeah.
Of a person that is indeed threatened by it because he has to say he's not. And who is also only thinking about a woman in the context of how she exists in relation to him and not who she is as a person.
There are certain personalities and certain people who have mental problems that do not jive well with my personality,
Yes.
meaning that they drive me up a wall. This man needed to be in jail.
I agree.
And as a result, it was driving me nuts because he was trying to justify what he was doing. It's like, it's wrong. You know what you think is wrong. And
Mhm.
I can tell because you're defensive inside your own head.
I think that's why I like it, because I think about it from the writing standpoint of being like, wow, he did that real well, huh? Because I hate this guy, and I should hate this guy, because, wow, woof, that's a lot to take in. And even the part after the uncomfortable scene where he says, I wanted to throw myself over the anvil-shaped rock, or I wanted to tell Erin that I wanted to throw myself over so that she would feel for me and see my grief. I'm like, that's not
Manipulation.
how that works, bud. That's not, hang on. But I feel like it just captures that in a way that can make the reader realize that the character you're hearing this all from is very unreliable and very unwell.
Honestly, by that point, I was so sick of the story because I switched back and forth between the book and an audiobook.
Yeah.
Because I had other things I needed to do, but I needed to finish this book. And so I put it to like 2 times speed. So I'm like, I'm
Listening to
listening,
gerbils.
but I'm really not focusing because I'm just like done with this story.
I do think some of, like you said, Jen, like some of the good ones should have been longer.
Mm.
I thought Quiet was too long.
That was my biggest. I mean, if I was to have label like my biggest fault with this book, it would be that the stories that I wanted, that I enjoyed, and that brought me in, it didn't give me like it didn't bring me it didn't give me a sense of resolution.
Yeah.
Like I talked about the one with the mother.
And
I didn't feel a sense of resolution with the one of the mountain climbing lady.
oh, I thought that one was too long.
That one
was a very
for
long
some
story.
reason
Didn't.
for some reason that one caught my attention, and I don't know why.
I liked the closing line of it very much, in which it says, so she talks about wanting to forget everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, like, never remember. I don't want to talk about this again. I don't want to think about this again. She gets to the bottom where, like, the reception places, and the man asks if she got to the top, and she says yes, and he gets a book out that everyone writes their name in if they summit, and he finds a spot for her on one of the last pages at the bottom, and after all the names before her, she adds her own, which she says, like, right after she's like, I don't want to think about this again. And it was just like, this is the human beings need to be remembered even when we're trying to forget things, where we're just like, but I have to tell people that I did it, even though I hate that this is a thing that happened.
Right. And then, like, the other one was the brother of the guy who
climbing to the window, pretending to dance.
That's the one where the guy tried to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that one also caught my attention, and I didn't get the closure from that one that I wanted either.
I thought that one was very good as well.
There was one that caught my attention, but it wasn't because it caught my attention because I enjoyed it. It was because it presented a world that would be an interesting book series, an interesting dystopian
Your
series.
Mother and I?
No.
Oh, okay.
That one felt ridiculous.
I really enjoyed that one, though.
I appreciated that one and how it handled it because it was like you are the person being talked to.
And it was so over the top.
So over the top. But I also know people like that. And they drive me nuts.
Right. But it was over the top about things that if you read them and you take away the exaggeration, you're like, this is a real world issue.
Yeah.
This is a thing that you should slow down a little bit on. But yes, I'm almost with you.
But the way that story specifically addressed what it was talking about, like what that guy was talking about, it almost seemed like reductive of the complexity of the issue that it's trying to address. Like, oh, it's just so simple if we only do this. And it's like, sir, there is so much more to that issue than what you are presenting here, and you are being overly reductive about
But in a way is making you think about the issue that he has brought up.
I get that, but it's just like
You know, I come to books to not think about the issues.
No, this
This-
was the wrong book.
So, but no, the one that felt interesting because it presented an interesting world, not because it itself was interesting, was the guy who was dying of cancer
Notes for a story of a man
And-
who will not die alone.
and didn't want to die alone. Like, because they said something about this sets a precedence of what if everyone does this. And I go, oh, well, that would be interesting. A world where everyone like makes a big ordeal about their death. Like they know they're about to die and then they go,
Mm-hmm.
let me do this. Mostly because there's a series, it's a YA dystopian, which I know are Squid's favorites. You actually might like this one because it's
About death?
very odd. It
Oh,
is.
good.
It's called Scythe.
Oh, I have had that recommended to me before.
I've recommended this one recently to somebody, and it is a dystopian world where death is no longer a given. And so eventually people just live too long.
Mm.
Like we're talking like thousands of years and they still look like they're 20. Too long. And so they have people who work as scythes. They go, okay, well, this person has, I think they call it turning, has turned 7 times. They've had multiple families. And it's time for them to go. And so it presents an interesting world because it looks at the fact of, life should be finite.
Mm-hmm.
But it does so in a way that kind of lets you get to that yourself. Like it shows you what would happen if that wasn't the case. Neil Schuster is a really good author in my opinion, although I could not read his other series because it was a little too gross for me. But it was also body horror, which is not a thing for me. But I'll explain that one to you later, John. But because of that, having read that series and enjoying that series so much, I went, oh, well, that would be another interesting world to delve into.
Yeah, I really liked that one too.
2 thoughts
Okay.
that came to me while you were talking there, Celeste. One, that specific story that you were talking about that was in this book, where that dying man is celebrated, and really kind of rolling that around in my mental mouth, so to speak, with how you were talking about it and really getting the flavor from it. It almost, like, now that I'm really thinking about it, it almost strikes me as a commentary on what's been deemed as gold star culture.
Are you talking about the story from the book, or are you talking about the story from the other books that I was
The story
describing?
from the book.
Okay.
It feels a lot like almost a subverted commentary on gold star culture or participation award culture, where everybody gets a medal. You know what I mean?
I did not get
I
that
feel-
from this.
Well, no,
I
it's
feel like you're describing more of Scythe than
no.
Because this book is also not them coming together for a celebration.
he is going to kill himself,
Right.
and
Right.
he decides that he wants people there when he does
But
it.
with the concept of, what kind of precedent does this set?
Oh.
It feels like the same argument for and against that whole participation award sort of thing. Like, what kind of precedent are we
Gotcha.
setting with this idea of this whole celebration? And does everybody do this, or so it was just a random thought I had when you were discussing that. And
I gotcha.
and I think when there's that the amount of esotericism that was in this book, and how much he leaves it open to interpretation. I think that's part of the beauty of the open-endedness of some of these stories, where you can kind of roll it around in your mouth a little bit and discover other flavor complexities that are there. And I know I'm using mouth
A lot, but it's fine. Keep going.
mouth allegories, and I don't know why, but here we are.
Because you're hungry?
I
Maybe.
am hungry.
How are you hungry?
But how are you hungry?
I haven't had dinner yet, and I'm making chicken soup after
Fair.
we're done. But the other thing, you talking about Scythe and wanting to kind of discover that world that's in the book that we're talking about as well a little bit more, it did remind me of a short story that I have listened to the audiobook version of, that I think you would enjoy, and I would recommend to our listeners as well, called The Dispatcher. And I'm going to pull that up real quick, and I can tell you exactly who wrote it. But the audiobook is, if I remember right, I think the audiobook is read by Bundle Snatch Cumberbund.
Oh, I like his voice.
While you look up that, the notes for A Story of a Man Who Will Not Die Alone, for me, like you kind of said, that each reader gets a lot of different things out of these stories because they're so open. And for me,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, for me, it was reading this one was less about, like in the other ones, you're kind of listening to a story happen.
Mm-hmm.
For this one, because of the title of the story, I was like, this story is not about the man in the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the author of the story. Because he's writing notes about this story of this man.
Right.
So I was thinking more about, like, who is this person that is processing Basil's life? Because the story's not about Basil. It's about the author. Which I just find it interesting.
Yeah. So The Dispatcher, I take it back. It wasn't Benjamin Cumberbatch. It was narrated by Zachary Quinto, actually.
I like his voice too. I also really appreciate that we've gotten no closer to getting his name right.
And the author is John Scalzi. Name of the book is called The Dispatcher. It was released in 2016. For the audiobook, it's only 2 hours and 18 minutes long. But it's a novella. So
apparently it was originally done as an audiobook.
Oh, really? Good to know.
Which you don't, because as soon as you said it, I went, let me Google this. But you don't generally find things that are audiobooks first. So that's fascinating to me, because that then means that that is the preferred method of it.
It's super tasty. I would recommend it to you if you dug that concept that was being played with in that story.
It was definitely, like I said, definitely better than the other one, which for the listeners was the Unbound series. I wasn't able to read more than the first book in that series because I just couldn't handle.
But getting back to the book that we actually read for this podcast.
Sorry, my eyes glazed over for a second because of all the YA thoughts that were still going through my head about Scythe. Anyway. One of the ones that was short that I thought was appropriately short and very good was When They Learned to Yelp. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
That
Vaguely.
was interesting.
Yeah, because that one, to me, very much read like a very obvious metaphor where he didn't hide it under too much other stuff. It was just like,
yes,
we are teaching our children how to speak up for themselves because we had to do it when we were young. And they've lived such comfortable lives that now they don't have to, and they don't know how.
Yeah. That one because it didn't feel like a story, it felt more like a commentary on society. And so I didn't necessarily enjoy it, because I don't want to say I enjoyed any of this book. Well, because again, by the time I got to that story, I was just so done.
Yeah.
That it kind of like, I might have, if someone had said, hey, this is an interesting article someone wrote, or a interesting little thesis thought, or whatever you want to call it, read this. I think you'll enjoy it. I probably would have gone, oh yeah, that's interesting. But because it was part of the whole, I just was not feeling it.
That's fair. I understand. I still love this book, even if you hated it.
I'm glad. I'm glad that somebody likes it.
Sure does.
Because
Actually,
I'm sure Mr. Eggers put in hard work in being that pretentious.
Yes. Yes, he did. Every single time.
I love that in this particular episode we've covered the entire spectrum of how you can feel about a book. We have someone who enjoyed the book. We have somebody who's pretty much ambivalent on it, which is me, and then we have someone who very much disliked the book. And that goes to show that there's a plethora of perspective that that individuals can have on a specific novel or offering, which was kind of what I was kind of tapping on in my little disclaimer in the last episode, that we all have our own opinions about things, and just because somebody hates a book doesn't mean it's not okay for you to enjoy it.
Yeah. We may not understand why, but feel free.
Yes. And Dave, like, this book of Dave Eggers is also, I feel like, very different than some of his other books, because I've read one of his actual novels, A Hologram for the King. Still a wild story, and he still does a little bit of the esoteric stuff, but it's definitely not as crazy as some of these are.
See, having read this book, I would not try any of his other books.
I wouldn't suggest them to you, so it's okay. Part of it's knowing your audience too. Like, that's why I like suggesting it for this, so we can get those opinions. But if I was like, Celeste, here's a book you should read, it wouldn't be Dave Eggers.
But I
appreciate that.
I do appreciate what us doing this podcast brings with that, though, because we do have such contrasting tastes in what we like. It does force some of us to step outside of what our normal literary boundaries are, or our literary circles, rather.
Literary preferences.
Sometimes you read an entire YA novel series in a week because it was just so good.
Right, but it's stuff that we wouldn't normally venture in. Like, for instance, despite the fact that you hated 14, it wasn't something that you would have read, and you went there and you're like, nope, not for me.
Would like to not go back if I could.
And or with Celeste, with John dies at the end, her dad had recommended that to her a while ago, I think.
I still question that, because I was like 17 when he recommended that to me.
This seems right.
But you read it for the podcast, and that was a thing. So it's good to step outside of your, and I think that's what one of the biggest goals for this podcast is, to take people outside of their preferences and have them experience other writing perspectives that they wouldn't otherwise sample. And whether or not you like it, that's fine. You have your opinions about it, but try new things. Experience life from other perspectives, and who knows what you're going to find. And you might find yourself running down a cyborg Cinderella bunny trail,
or down a mountain at high speeds after summiting Kilimanjaro. You never know. Just to loop it back to the book. Does anyone have any spiritual takeaways? I did this time.
Oh,
I
good.
wrote something down.
Oh, good, because I'm
so glad.
Certainly did not.
Yes.
Me neither.
This comes from Celeste's favorite story, which is not the bad story, but after I was thrown in the water and before I drowned.
Oh.
Yes. Which I would have warned you, but it's in the title.
I remember. I remember when I got to that story, and I think I specifically sent a message to you guys. I'm like, if he kills this dog, I'm going to burn this book.
You did.
Squid types, does the dog die at the end.com.
Well,
Plot twist, the dog dies at the end of this book, guys.
because of the way the story started, I didn't think that the dog was gonna die.
Because it happened at the beginning too.
Yeah.
I do.
And then it got weird. And I was
It
like,
did
what?
get weird. But I really appreciated the way he wrote that one, even though it was one of my least favorite in the book. Really didn't like that story. But
what is your spiritual stuff?
at the end, we're going to step away from the theological point that it makes at the end about God being the Son. But we're going to use this for our spiritual takeaway anyway. Because this dog dies, and then his last piece of wisdom is basically that he finds out that God is the Son. Of course God's the Son. Why would we have God and the Son? Anyway. But the last line is, of course God is the Son. Everyone in the life before was cranky, I think, because they just wanted to know. And that closing line, especially as the closing line of the book, I think is a perfect encapsulation of how we are hungry, because people hunger for God and they don't know why, and they don't know the truth. And it's just like, there we go. I don't think Dave Edgar's theological in any way. Don't think he's right with the Lord currently. Who knows? I don't know. Never met him. I won't presume. But it's one of those things that anytime I read lines like this, I'm like, people call out to God even when they don't think they are, or even if they don't know they are, because we're hungry. We just want to know. Yeah. That's it. That's what I got from this book.
Fair
Come love
enough.
Jesus.
I like it. I feel like I liked that better than I liked the book.
Oh, the point I was going to make at the beginning where, John, you're like, some of these stories left me wanting more. And I was like, the book left you hungry. That was the point.
I won't deny the fact that the irony of that was not lost on me.
Yes. And that's why I like this book, because it lets me have these conversations where I can be like, what if that's what he meant? What if that was the point?
That's the trick of highly esoteric writing, is that because it's so open, you can make those connections. Mm-hmm. So.
And it sparks good conversation, more than some movie novelizations did. Anyway, that's been our podcast. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. We didn't get as heavy as we thought we might, so that's good. We've saved you all. I hope you enjoyed it.
I tried to glance over the truly blech
bring
stuff.
your kids back for the next episode. We'll see you then. I can't stop recording, Celeste.
Oh! I was like, what are you doing? So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Thank you.
We Read Allegedly. It is a part of the Devoted Geek Network. Feel free to check out our other podcasts on geekdevotions.com. Join us next month as we read, allegedly, the utterly uninteresting and unadventurous tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant by Drew Hayes. We'll see you next time.
Someday
things are gonna get easier.